cocktail culture has existed for so long. There's thousands of signature drinks, but with coffee, it's kind of a newer thing, like what you're doing. Form a lot of really unique things that have never actually been done before, which is really cool.
Within like the younger generation, the rise of non-alcoholic culture, all of this like weird intersection that's kind of like leading to coffee, where people are looking for spaces to like enjoy a beverage, but you know, not have it be alcoholic.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the Equal Parts Coffee Podcast, episode 25. We've got I'm Jack.
I'm Nick.
And we got a special guest joining us today, Morgan Eckroth.
Thanks so much for having me. Really glad to be here.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, of course.
We're really excited to have you.
It's an honor to have you on, honestly. I love everything that you do in the industry. It's just amazing to see kind of a little bit how you started and how you've grown and become very well known in the industry today and doing amazing things and winning competitions and all of that.
Well, thank you. It's been a very, very wild journey. It feels like it's gone very fast, but we're all in coffee together, so it's a lot of fun.
I don't know if you remember, but when we were at Expo, we talked to you very briefly, so you probably don't remember. But my wife told me that if I met you, to get a picture with you. And I didn't.
So
no, I think we can count this. We
this
can count
counts,
this,
actually,
right?
yes.
I feel like it does. Yeah.
Right?
This is better than a photo, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're very glad to have you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, should we dive into this coffee, maybe?
Yes.
Let's do it.
I'll serve you first.
Oh, wow. All
Yeah.
right. So we are brewing a wash process Kenya today, Kenya Nairi, AA grade. It is, double AB grade. Very delicious coffee. Nairi holds a special place in my heart. It was one of the first coffees that kind of really stuck out to me as I was learning roasting with my dad at a young age. It's just very grapefruit forward, and it just kind of stuck out that this isn't just coffee. There's a lot more to this. Kind of opened my eyes to see that there's just so much beauty in coffee, and I just never stopped wanting to learn more about coffee from there.
Off the bat, like mine just finished brewing as well, and when I opened the bag, just that like super tropical, like you have mango as one of the tasting notes on this bag, and that just felt like, even from just opening it, like absolutely spot on for this. Yeah,
there's these like Australian brand sour candies at Costco that they had them a while ago, and there's a mango flavor, and especially when cupping this coffee, I'm like, shout out Costco as always. It always reminds me of that candy. I don't know why I like that specific mango flavor.
Maybe you have to bring me some. I gotta try some.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Anytime we're bagging this in the roastery, we have like the fans on because it gets warm back there. As soon as somebody opens the bin of this coffee, you just
everyone
get that
knows.
Fresh
you know
smell.
what coffee
It's
it is.
just like, man, what it sometimes, oddly enough, it smells like a very delicious tomato-based pasta. It sounds interesting, but it's very. I just love it.
I've always loved, I know like Kenya sometimes gets kind of like the rap for that like tomato call. But for me, that's always been something that's been like such a plus for it. Like I remember one of the very first Kenyan coffees I had like years ago when I was first starting as a barista was like very tomato forward. And I remember a lot of our customers like kind of had like an adverse reaction to that. But for me, I was like, this is like so delicious and like wonderfully savory in a way that is like delicate and nuanced, and like this is definitely not like tomato at all, but for me, like Kenyans, I'm like one of those weird people who like kind of like chases that tomato tasting note just because it's such a unique coffee experience.
We had a Colombia a number of years ago. Maria Rosa Oidor, I think was the name of the farmer, and it had a very strong tomato note, and we put that on the bag. We were like,
you have to like let people know.
Yeah, we're like, do we want to? It doesn't sound great to put this on the bag because sometimes we'll taste jalapeno, but we're not going to necessarily put that on the bag. But we've been trying to find a coffee like that and haven't been able to since, which is unfortunate. But we're always looking. So
love it.
So, Morgan, there are going to be people listening that know who you are, obviously, and there are going to be people listening in our audience that have no idea who you are. So, kind of briefly, what do you do in coffee, and kind of how did you get there?
Yeah,
like into specialty coffee.
Totally. So My name is Morgan Eckroth. A lot of people know me online as Morgan Drinks Coffee. Nowadays, I'm kind of first and foremost an online content creator. I've been working in the coffee industry for going on 8 years now in various roles. I started as a barista for a very, very long time. But alongside that, I started sharing coffee videos online. They've taken many different forms over the years. Nowadays, it's a lot about signature drink development. I do a lot of recipe development in the coffee and mixology world. A lot of barista and hospitality stories, and then a lot of just kind of general coffee education as well. So that's kind of one facet of my life. I also work on the marketing team for Onyx Coffee Lab out of Rogers, Arkansas. And then I'm also a competitive barista. So I've been competing in the US Barista Championship for, I think, 5 seasons now. Been involved for 6, but competing for 5. I was the 2022 US Barista Champion and that year's runner-up. And I've continued to compete since then and have been the runner-up in the US a couple times. But that is a part of my life that I dearly love. And kind of all 3 of those things in total make up this weird coffee career that I have nowadays.
I remember, because I also had my start in the coffee industry around 8-9 years ago when I was roasting coffee in the garage with my dad. And I remember shortly after we opened the first cafe, it was November of 2017, my sister Grace was sending me these videos, and I was like, they were your videos, and I was like, no, they were great. They were great, very relatable, barista videos. And I remember seeing that, and I was like, I think I had heard about you then, and then I heard about you again when you won, was it the 2022 US Barista Champion?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and then I was saw your growth in there, and that was honestly really inspiring for me and for a lot of people on the team to see starting as a barista, having a lot of fun in there, that there's a lot of growth potential in there, and that it's not just be a barista, have some fun, and then do something else. You can actually pursue a career in that. So
it's a lot of weird career paths in coffee nowadays. It's very, very cool to see.
It is.
Yeah. So there are a lot of people who probably until right now didn't know that you could compete in coffee or what that even looks like. So one, what do you actually do when you compete in coffee?
Yeah.
And what are you doing right now to kind of prepare and head into that?
Totally. So the US Barista Championship is a very, very cool format of coffee competition. It is a competition that happens both at national levels and world levels. So it's kind of perfect timing. I just got back from Milan watching the World Barista Championship, which just wrapped up. And at the world level, there are, I want to say, depends on the year, but a little bit over 50 countries that compete in it. So it's a very, very large competition. And the format remains the same both at Worlds and also at Nationals. So for national competition, you as the barista competitor are preparing a 15-minute presentation, and for most people, it's fully scripted. So you'll have a thesis that you're presenting to the judges. You're basically giving them a TED talk, for lack of better terms. But alongside that 15-minute presentation, you're serving them 3 courses. So you have espresso, you have a milk course, which nowadays can be pretty much anything. You can use any commercially available alternative milk, dairy milk, and so there's a lot of whisking up of these really cool high-tech milk blends for that. And then you have the signature beverage portion, which is really sky's the limit. The only hard restriction is you can't use any alcoholic ingredients. And so people will whip up these very, very cocktail inspired beverages. Usually there are you'll have fogs and garnishing elements and interesting cups. And so all of that is bundled into those 15 minutes. And you have a panel of 4 sensory judges who you're serving. And then you also have tech judges who are watching cleanliness and workflow and a whole bunch of really nitty gritty stuff, while your sensory judges are scoring you on both the quality of what you're serving, but additionally the accuracy of the notes you're giving. So for each course, you are providing tactile calls, so texture and feel of all the drinks, and you're also providing taste calls. And so what you're giving, lining up with the judge's experience, is where a bulk of the points come from.
Really fascinating, yeah.
That sounds challenging to like, do in the moment.
It's
That
very
sounds exhausting.
rehearsed.
Yes.
So what does prep look like for that for you?
Totally. Prep for me is, it changes every year. I think back to some of my very early years of competing and how I prepared for that. And I just want to like shrink and hide my face, because it has definitely evolved into something that is a lot more structured and I think better for me personally. Most competitors will like have very different like preferences and ways that they prepare. But for me, preparation for a national season usually takes like 6 to 4 months, but genuinely like the minute I'm done with the previous year's competition season, I'm already like ideating, like there's a Google Doc being made for the following year. Some of the main things, especially right now, we're in, when we're filming this is October, and typically nationals is like March, April of the following year. So we're getting into that like crunch zone a little bit. Yep. Around now is where I'm really starting to think about what coffee I want to serve. So sourcing different samples, tasting, cupping just as much as possible. Some seasons I'll go into the season with like a very clear idea of what I'm looking for, be it flavor profile or variety or origin. And some years, a little bit like this year, I'm kind of like, I just need to taste everything and the right coffee will find me in that. So that's happening. And then simultaneous to that, you start really thinking about your theme as well. And these two steps go really hand in hand, because you want your coffee to tie into your theme and vice versa. So I've already got a theme in mind. And so now it's kind of like finding that missing puzzle piece in the coffee that'll latch in. And also something that feels good to serve and is really delicious. And give it like another 2 months or so and I'll be knee deep in whipping up some of those high-tech milk blends and, doing all the weird mad scientist stuff that we got to do. And it's very structured. The closer we get to competition, it's a lot of rehearsal. It's a lot of like tech practice. But right now it's still the fun, kind of like dreamy, ephemeral phase of like, there are so many options out there. What do we actually want to do?
Do you take any of the drinks that you create for competition and try to like bring them to fruition in a cafe setting at all?
It's a great question. I don't want to spoil anything, but that is something that I'm really thinking seriously about this season. However, in past seasons, like some of the drinks, whenever I'm doing pop-ups or like coffee festival events or stuff, like I've brought past competition drinks, which is a very, very fun experience for people. It's really, really cool for me to be able to share these drinks that are usually only experienced for judges. Usually there's some modification that needs to happen. One of the really big parts about signature drinks in competitions is that they are specifically tailored to these like very, very like high echelon coffees that we're serving. And so it's always a little bit of adjustment to match them to whatever coffee I have access to. But, sharing weird nitro tropical like punch beverages with people is one of my favorite things to do. It's so far outside the usual like latte or, espresso tonic thing you would get. Absolutely.
That's one thing that we've been trying to push more and more is like think outside of the box when creating seasonal drinks. And what we've done at our cafe is we've started, at least this year, we have a winter drink competition for our own baristas of kind of like come up with the best or the craziest drink and we'll all compete and like the best drinks will make the menu. So that's been a lot of fun.
I love that.
Everyone coming up with drinks, kind of like a mini barista competition in our own cafe. So
it pushes, there's so much like the sky's the limit on like texture and flavors. Like I've spent a lot of time like kind of knee deep in the cocktail world just because I'm like, all of those things that they get to do with liquids, I'm like, there's no reason why so much of that can't translate over to coffee as well. Like we get kind of stuck in our boxes sometimes on like what is a coffee drink and what isn't. And it's like, we could be doing anything here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I know one of my great friends is very much into the like cocktail making, and he a lot of the times will come alongside us to help us kind of think outside of the box and create a coffee forward like not non-alcoholic cocktail, of course, but like a coffee forward drink that's not just a latte. And that's been really fun to see. It's not something that maybe comes natural to me. I think more of just my more focus on the day-to-day is just single origin coffees, but it is really fun, and that's something that I want to learn a lot more about. So
absolutely.
It must be cool to kind of be in the space where like cocktail culture has existed for so long. There's, thousands of signature drinks. So not that there's nothing new, but there's also a lot to draw from. But with coffee, it's kind of a newer thing, like what you're doing. So you're kind of, in a way, like really having an opportunity to form a lot of really unique things that have never actually been done before, which is really cool.
A lot of pioneering going on.
It's well, it's we're in like kind of an we're in a very interesting time for a lot of reasons, but like there is, within like the younger generation, like there's all these studies about like the rise in like non-alcoholic culture, in like, more people are leading like more sober curious, like there's kind of like all of this like weird intersection that's kind of like leading to coffee, where people are looking for spaces to like enjoy a beverage but not have it be alcoholic. And it's like coffee is a really, really cool substitute for a lot of drinks, where not everything, of course, you can't like substitute 1-to-1, but you can take things that are very familiar for people who like maybe were drinkers or are still kind of like treading the line, and like translate it into something that is a new coffee experience for them that not only is familiar, but also kind of pushes them down that road of coffee a little bit, where they might leave, drinking a beverage thinking like, hey, I didn't know coffee could taste like that. And I think that's such a great way to like start people down this road of like coffee knowledge that we're all, totally sunk down the rabbit hole on already.
Yep, for sure.
So I'm curious, when you start a new drink, how do you like start that creative process, right? So you're saying like you're trying all these coffees and maybe you find the coffee, but where do you start? Like I don't think I would. I don't think I'd start with anything decent. So that's not. How do you actually start that?
Well, to be clear, I also rarely start with anything decent. So you're not alone in that. Typically, my creative process has evolved a lot over the years, and I've started to like only now begin to figure out what that formula is for me. But the place that I always start with is like is kind of reverse engineering from the customer experience. So the first question I'm always asking myself before I get into ingredients or anything else is like, what do I want my, guests to be feeling while they drink this coffee? And so, for me, when I'm thinking about like seasonal menus, you're often thinking about like nostalgia. I feel like in the winter and like fall months, like you're looking for something that's like very comforting and warming. You want them to feel at home and very welcome. Whereas you have like in the summer where maybe you want them to feel more refreshed and like brightened at the end of it. And I think really defining, at least with one or two words, what that feeling is, has always been really helpful for me, because that then leads into kind of my next questions, which are similarly broad, but they're asking like, what color does this drink taste like? Like beyond getting into like nitty gritty, like similar to like coffee tasting when we're kind of starting from a big picture and getting smaller. I'm usually looking for what the color of the drink is next. I think about like, really tropical, like bright flavors, like as being very orange and yellow and maybe a little bit red, like you have green as like citrus in there, or you have something that's like a darker brown with baking spices, like nailing that down. And then the other question I'm asking to kind of finish this initial trifecta is also like, what is the texture of the drink going to be? I think this is something that is like kind of a newer thought when it comes to coffee. With like lattes are almost always going to be like creamy, like you have dairy and fats in there that kind of like wash out whatever texture you could have. But you could have something that is sparkling. You could have something that's silky. You could have something that's really heavy and round. You can have really like thin coffee drinks. So for me, nailing what my texture is, nailing kind of the general like color palette of the flavor, and then the emotion, like usually that trifecta will give me enough to like whip out like a first batch of a drink that's like kind of decent. Whereas if I'm starting from nothing and just kind of like throwing stuff together, that's where I find that I start to get really lost and start just kind of like iterating myself out of existence. Like you just keep like chasing something that you don't really know what you're looking for. That's a little bit of my creative process. And then after that, it's truly like, what does the coffee taste like? What do I think will pair well with it that fits these kind of 3 buckets that I've outlined for myself? And then just like, really dialing in on a recipe.
Yeah. Do you have, a lot of these obviously are a lot of flavor pairings going on. I'm curious, do you have like any culinary background, or is that stuff that you kind of just learned from scratch?
A lot of it is I don't have a strong culinary background. My very first job ever was working in an industrial camp kitchen along with like a team of 8 where we served I think about 300 kids, like 3 meals a day for like an entire summer. I don't know if I learned a lot of flavor pairing there. I learned how to crack eggs really, really quickly at that job. But most of my like experience nowadays comes from competition. Definitely forces you to learn all of that very, very quickly. But I also like I love the world of culinary. I spend most of my time reading like food writing. I buy cookbooks, not even to like make things from them, but to just like read them and like download them into my brain. So I'm always trying to like explore as many things that feel adjacent to coffee as possible in hopes that there will be information that I can bring back into my everyday.
Absolutely. I know we were talking just with Matt on a previous episode.
Love Matt
Rodbard, and it was very fascinating to see like the amount of parallels in a lot of specialty coffee and fine dining. Yeah, and it was cool to talk to him and see where that's going.
That's always my top recommendation for people when they're looking for like, and usually it's specifically around drink building, but I think it applies to a lot of areas in coffee. Is like taking off the blinders of just looking within the coffee industry and widening them as much as possible, just because, I mean, wine is so often the comparison that gets kind of tossed in with coffee, but you look at like bar culture, fine dining, like diners, like all of like agriculture, farms, like all of this like feeds into this like larger symbiotic relationship that coffee exists in.
Yeah, there's so much to learn from a lot of these different industries, and honestly, just the way that a lot of hospitality, not just the culinary side of things, but the hospitality. There's so much to learn of how to take care of people and how to make people feel loved. That's been really fun to learn more about.
Very much so.
Obviously, you said did you start as a barista before you started creating your content?
I did, yeah. I started working as a barista right as I was starting college. I thought it would be like a fun coffee college job. Like I kind of had that dream. And then within my first shift, I was like, oh no, I think I'm going to do this forever.
That's awesome.
Did you like coffee very much before?
I did. I found coffee, I think, a bit later than a lot of people did. My family were not coffee drinkers at all. I had like zero exposure to it prior to like getting my driver's license. So I was like freshly 16, and I like distinctly remembered it was my 16th birthday, and I drove to the Starbucks on my way to high school. I felt very cool until I walked in for the first time and realized I had no idea what anything on the menu was. And so I had my like, the classic caramel macchiato, walked to school feeling so cool. And that was the beginning of it. I very quickly found specialty coffee after then. And, it was, I was lost after that.
Was there like a specific point that you realized that like coffee could become your career outside of being a barista, or was it just kind of like slowly building?
It was kind of slowly building. I think for me, my eyes were really opened up to the larger community and world of coffee the very first time I ever competed. I grew up and started working in a coffee shop in Corvallis, Oregon, which is a like relatively small town like south of Portland. And so for me, like it felt like a very small world coffee was. I didn't really have much exposure outside of like maybe Portland, but mostly Corvallis. And so the first time I competed, I kind of had this sense of like, oh my gosh, there are so many other people who like care about this thing so much. And having them all in one space together truly opened up my eyes to the fact that coffee was, first of all, bigger than I thought it was. But as far as deciding to do it for a career, it was pretty slow moving up until COVID. I graduated in 2020, and so the last half of college for me was like completely remote. Due to restrictions, like the coffee shop I was working at completely closed down. And that's when I really started leaning into the online aspect of it, because for me, that was the only avenue I had left to, even kind of serve coffee to people via like a digital medium. And so that's when that really started taking off. But I think that first competition really was the first time I was like, oh, this could be a thing I do for a very long time.
Yeah, I listened to an interview of yours. I don't remember who it was with, but I remember you talking about that competition and that being an opportunity to really like bring people along with you in a way that other people haven't before. What does that like mean to you to be able to like share like what you enjoy with people and like bring them into the competition space with you?
Yeah, it's a very special thing. I think, barista competitions, as I described earlier, like they get very in the weeds very, very quickly. You look at like a barista competition score sheet and it's like, oh God, like they're very, very intricate. The ways that people get points is often, it's not very, like, as an audience member, you can watch a barista routine and think that person did amazing and like, of course they're gonna win, and then they like rank last, and you as an audience like don't really have a clear understanding of why that is. And so for me, like I've always found competitions to be filled with some of the most passionate and wonderful people in competition, and I was like, it's such a shame that like more people can't get into this, because it's coffee sports and it's so cool. So for me, it was mostly about just wanting to like just even give people like a slight idea of, if they watched a barista routine, understanding why people were doing the things that they were doing and how they were getting points from that. And it turns out explaining all of that in 15-minute YouTube videos is pretty difficult. But it was a really, really fulfilling thing afterwards, where it was like, I think it was like my mom, who of course like doesn't drink coffee, never has. She was like watching some of the routines that year and like texting me like questions about what the other competitors were doing. And I'm like, okay, if my mom can understand it, like I think we're like doing something right here.
That's awesome.
It's cool.
Yeah, I remember about you talking about seeing the greater coffee community as a whole. Like we're located up in Traverse City, Michigan. So not like a super small town, but not a huge town either. And specialty coffee is kind of growing a lot more, but it's not super saturated in that way. So going to the Coffee Expo in Houston last year that was this year. The year's not over yet. It was my first expo I've ever been to. It was so cool to see like how many this vast amount of people all in one room, just so in love with coffee, and everyone doing a million different things in the industry is very, very cool to see, and very, very encouraging, I feel like, to what we were doing in the area we're in.
Yeah, I love Expo for similar reasons to competition. I think it's, any job in hospitality is a really, really hard job, and coffee especially, like right now, like economically, politically, like it's just a really, really, really hard industry to be in. And so like rightfully so, it's really easy to get kind of like jaded, and you lose the rose-colored glasses pretty quickly, which I think is probably a good thing, but also it's easy to kind of forget the bigger picture, and these events where we can all be reminded that like we are all in this together, like we are all wanting this like giant beast of an industry to succeed is so valuable.
Yeah, it's fun to just see like it's just everybody's just so different from each other too, and just people all around the world, and like having this kind of unifying moment behind a single thing was really fun.
Yeah, it's like very, very unifying, and very like like at the end of the day, like we all love coffee, and we're all doing little different parts of it all working together to grow this industry as a whole. Very cool to see.
Absolutely.
So, say for people who are listening and maybe they're baristas, if they're like hearing about these competitions and interested in, and this is something personally I've been interested in for a while, like what would you say to somebody who wants to look into competing in a barista competition?
Totally. I love having this conversation. I've done it a couple times in the last few months, and I'm like, I feel like I've actually got my like shtick down. Like I know what I want to say at this point.
Yeah.
A couple of things. So the number one thing I always tell people is like, don't wait until you think you're ready for competition, just because you never will be. I was, it's like kind of like shocking to me still. I was like barely a year into being a barista as someone who had like really never drank coffee before when I competed for the first time. So I was like fully fresh, like knew nothing, but I just had this, I don't know. I had like stupid confidence that I could like try this thing at least. But it's like, you can't wait until you think you're ready or you have like enough experience, just because that day will never come. Competition itself will force you to grow and accelerate in such a unique way that I think the experience of that in and of itself is worth competing. The other thing I would say, there's kind of like three things here. So that's number one. The second thing would be make use of your resources online. Score sheets, rules and regulations, past competitions, all of these are accessible to people. And you would be surprised how many baristas like go into competing without ever having watched like a barista competition on YouTube. And just by watching something while like sitting down with a score sheet and like, you know, kind of acting like you're judging through it will give you such a wealth of information on how to approach your own routine. So definitely make use of all of that. And then the third thing, if you're still not sure if you are ready to like fully commit and invest into competing, because it is an investment, very much so, both from a time aspect, but also monetarily, it's a very expensive competition. The thing I really recommend people do just to see if it is for them is volunteer or judge. Not only will it give you like so much information that will be a huge leg up for you as a competitor later, but also the barrier for entry for those two roles are lower than I think people like expect, especially judging if there are like, you know, lower level like regional or qualifier events. The competition team is fully equipped to calibrate you, to train you how to judge, to like really get you up to speed. And all it takes is you signing up and getting yourself to that event. And so in that way, it is far more accessible, and I think will lead to most people being far better competitors, say if they choose to compete the following year.
Absolutely. Well, that's super helpful.
It's so fun though. It's I think competition is it's for a lot of people. It's not for a lot of people, but I think the real success of it comes out of defining your own metrics for success. I've like chatted with some like younger and like starting competitors, and it's like the number one question is why are you doing this? And your answer cannot be to win, because only one person wins every year. And it's like, just don't aim for that. That can be the cherry on top. But like, what is your metric for success? Be it growth, be it a skill, like you have to have something else defined. Otherwise, it's a competition that'll like run you into the ground really quickly.
Yeah. I know one of my favorite things about coffee industry as a whole is that there's so much to learn, and you really can never stop learning, whatever it be, whether roasting, doing latte art. There's never a point. Something. Yeah, there's never a point where you know it all. And I feel like that's one thing about competition that I see as really valuable, is kind of just learning a lot that you wouldn't be able to learn elsewhere. And maybe you would last place or you wouldn't make the qualifiers, but it's just kind of like being able to like throw yourself at it and to learn as much as possible. Just sounds really, really fascinating and really fun to me.
Definitely. I mean, like how many other like competitions will have you making like specialized milk blends for, you know, like multiple weeks? It's like, you'll come out with more knowledge than you went in with. It's just guaranteed.
Yeah. And I feel like going into that, learning all of that from the greater industry as a whole, and then taking a piece of that back to my own cafe and kind of like,
Definitely.
here's what I learned, and here's a drink that I made, and this is why I didn't do very well, and this is what I'm gonna learn next year. I love learning, and I love sharing what I've learned with other people. So
yeah,
sounds
absolutely.
like a lot of fun.
The rising tide lifts all boats sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm curious, are there any drinks that you've made that have kind of just become ones that you make kind of often? Like, are there any drinks that have kind of become staples for you to like make for yourself, or like you just a lot of the time like you'll make them at home for when you're hosting, like that kind of thing?
You know, it's not one that I make super often just for like myself on the day-to-day, but it's the drink I enjoy the most as a treat, and it's the one that I've been able to like take to multiple events and like have gotten like pretty universally positive feedback. It is a riff on something I served at the 2024 US Barista Championship at the Nationals. I essentially like pitch it as a tropical nitro drink. It was inspired very much by the terroir of the coffee I was using. So I was using a Panama Gesha from Janssen Coffee in Los Alpes. And so this was a coffee that is, of course, grown at super high elevation. It's grown alongside so many tropical fruits. It's a very soft, like pink floral coffee. And so for me, I wanted a drink that really like leaned heavily on that tropical kind of counterpart to it. And so it is espresso, preferably from like a more floral, like lighter roasted, Gesha, pink bourbon, something like that. It uses mango and orange juice, lime, or you can also use, pretty much like any like sort of sharp, like high citric acid, citric fruit, and then maple syrup and a little bit of soy lecithin. And all of that gets charged just in like a whipping siphon with N2O. And what you get is it has this really, really wonderful, like creamy texture, but also flavor to it from the soy lecithin. It almost adds this like faux dairy, like you perceive it as dairy, but there's no dairy in it. And the soy lecithin also stabilizes the foam. And so instead of it like sputtering out super quickly, you get this super frothy, just like really, really fluffy round beverage. And that is like one of my absolute favorite things to serve people, because it's pretty easy, like ingredient wise. They're all pretty like raw ingredients. There's nothing too compound in there. But just texturally, and then with the right coffee, it's just like so bright and refreshing in a way that I think a lot of coffee drinks aren't. So that's probably my favorite to take around.
Awesome.
That sounds good.
No.
We'll make it at the next expo.
Yeah. So are there any like flavor pairings that you see or that you think are underrated or underutilized in coffee shops or competition?
Ooh, that's a good question. We often lean on like the really kind of like sweet, like baking, like adjacent flavors. Like you see a lot of like baking spices, like brown sugars, like all that sort of stuff. And it's so delicious. But I think for me, what I would be excited to see more of in coffee, and what I'm personally like, this is something I'm like trying to figure out myself too, as a challenge, but I get really excited by coffee drinks that lean more on the like savory and honestly like herbal side. I feel like those two words are often like a little bit scary when it comes to coffee. Like we want coffee to be sweet. We want it to be bright and acidic. But I have in my time had some like really delicious like umami drinks before. And that's the sort of like flavor like profile that I'm personally like trying to explore more. So I think it's really underutilized right now. And I get excited that potentially we could lean more into kind of like the green savory area of coffee and make it really, really good.
Yeah. What are those ingredients that you use to bring out those flavors?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, salt is just like an easy one. I think more salt in everything is kind of my mantra. I'm like, it's first of all like a wonderful flavor enhancer, but also you have the added benefit of like coffee is bitter and salt tempers that really, really nicely. But you also like, I think even taking sweet flavors and adding that like sort of balancing umami, like I think a really obvious, but really, really well done version of that is like, you think about like miso caramel, really like lives in both of those worlds. There's a drink that I had recently that was done by a really good friend of mine, Ryan Castellaz, and it is a ramen latte, and it has soy sauce in it. Like it's got like it's garnished with cilantro. Like it is as like savory as possible, but it's got a little bit of, it's got the balancing sweetness, and it turns into this like delicious, just like warming, comforting, like really like umami bomb in a way that is, it tastes like ramen, like it does, but at the same time it tastes like a delicious coffee drink.
That's so interesting.
I love that. They're like out of the ordinary. Makes you stop and think. If you see that on the menu, you're like,
you're gonna
what
order
the heck
it.
is that? You're like, I have to try that, right?
It's
so
so
what
good.
would you say for like cafe owners or baristas who see this side of the maybe competitive industry, and they're seeing all these unique drinks, and what would you say to like what could help foster that creativity in people's own cafes to kind of experiment with those drinks?
Yeah, I mean, I think y'all are doing like have a very good example of it, as you mentioned earlier, of like having a kind of communal like drink competition that is pushing people to like start exploring with the support of a company. I think that's the biggest thing, is providing the resources to your staff to be able to explore those pathways. I mean, I mentioned it with competition earlier, but like all of this sort of like R&D and like access to these tools and ingredients, like it's all very expensive, and like as a barista that can be really hard to justify even if you have a strong interest in it. And so I would say like just providing the support and the infrastructure, but also like providing like a goalpost, like, maybe one of these drinks ends up on the menu, or maybe it's something that customers vote on or goes online, or like whatever that is, like providing an incentive structure or even compensation on the other side of it. Like, I think that is such a great way to promote like further creativity.
I feel like it took us a little too long to actually do this competition, because we had a lot of baristas who were like, hey, can I experiment with a drink? And we're like, you don't even have to ask us, please. We love you guys doing this. So we're like, yeah, do it. And we're like, well, a lot of people have interest in doing this, but I can understand it's like, well, you're not just gonna go home and make more coffee. So we provide the space and our coffee lab to kind of experiment, and then have a competition where you can win a piece of coffee equipment and some money and get a chance to get the drink on the menu. So
I mean, I love one of my like other favorite competitions in the world of coffee right now is the Barista League, which is not like SCA associated. It's a different independent competition, but it's a competition that really tries to like lower the barriers of entry as much as possible. And so as a competitor, in like the most recent version of the competition, you like walk up and they're like, here are all of the ingredients you can use. Like every competitor has the same array of ingredients, like everything's provided, and you as a competitor then get to make signature drinks out of that. And I think those sorts of competitions are such a fun way for people to also step in. Like, I would love to see a world where, I love the throwdown model, but it's like, I would love to see a world where it's like a signature beverage throwdown. Like that would be so much fun.
That reminds me of one cooking TV. I think it was Chopped.
That's what I was going to say.
I'm waiting for Coffee Chopped. That's what I want.
I know. Oh, that'd be great.
Mystery box challenge.
Running around fighting over the stuff in the pantry.
Yeah. You open up and it's like, here are the ingredients you have to use to make a latte.
Truly, I have toyed around with this idea, and the production that I would need to pull together for it has held me back, but I'm like, someday.
For someone who, I know you said you can never be ready for a competition, but maybe they're thinking about it a couple of years out, what can they do to kind of start preparing now, like in their own space?
Yeah. Taste a lot, taste often. I think cupping as much as possible, and just really experiencing the full spectrum of coffee flavor is a really important skill to take into competition. Dial in as many coffees as possible. One of the, in barista competitions, you are of course using, for the most part, like your selected coffee. But even then, like chances are you're going to be on a grinder you've never used before. Like you're going to be using water that like you're not used to. Like all of these like little variables shift and change what's happening in the cup. So just get really comfortable like dialing in on different setups with different coffees. I think the other thing that is really helpful if you're, still a couple years out is just follow the current season. Like I truly like love when people view coffee competitions as like coffee sports, because these, this season has been happening for like the last 7 months. The World Barista Championship was fully live streamed. There's like live rankings that are posting. Like if you kind of go down the rabbit hole to find out where things are being posted, like you can truly follow it like you would like your favorite sports team. And so I think doing that and kind of getting invested in the culture of competitions can go a long way too.
As we get ready to wrap here, what excites you most about the future of specialty coffee?
It's a good question. Right now, the world feels very scary. Like we're watching like the C price just go crazy again. Like there's there's a lot of things happening in the world. But I will say, I think I get really excited about people approaching coffee in a very like personal and hospitality focused way. There's all like the different definitions about like waves of coffee, and people are kind of like always searching for finding like the next wave. But I think something that we are seeing more and more, especially in the wake of COVID, which I think was like a pretty hard reset for most people, is people doing coffee the way that they want to do it rather than the way that has either like worked in the past or like the way they think they should do it. And so, I look at, a lot of really, really small like coffee startups and like really small like coffee experiences, I think is something we're seeing more and more, where it's less about like a high volume cafe, like grab and go, like really like curating something for people to experience with coffee, be it like a space, be it a like tasting menu, whatever have you, and really bringing back the core of like hospitality. Like that feels like a really, really bright spot in what is otherwise like kind of a bleak, like you kind of like, check the news every day and you're like, I don't know, what things are going to cost, like any of that. I think bringing it back to hospitality and really caring for that with equal measure to the coffee that's being served is what's getting me excited nowadays.
Yeah. There's a lot to love about coffee. There's a lot to be uncertain about the future of coffee, but like the other part that I love about coffee so much is the people, because that's, without people, there's no coffee, right? And just having that opportunity to see tons of people every day into hopefully create an unforgettable experience for them, and to love them in a special way that maybe unfortunately they wouldn't have experienced otherwise, is a very cool opportunity to have, and something that we try to never take lightly, because it's easy to clock in and drink some coffee and sling the drinks and then be done with the day. But
totally.
You can have a real impact on people that come in every day, because the people will come, and our job is to serve them delicious coffee and to love them well.
That's exactly it.
We see that in your skits you like to post as well too. They're all very focused on
that's
that.
The hope.
It's
just like really kind intentionality is I think really important nowadays.
Yeah. It's unfortunate you don't see a lot of that with maybe some other industries, that like saying hello and actually talking to somebody is seen as like maybe shocking, and that's maybe not the norm, and that's something like we want to, that should be the bare minimum. So we try to learn and grow from there.
Very much so.
Morgan, we're very grateful for your time.
Yeah.
It was wonderful to have you on.
This has been great. Honored to be here. And also thank you again for the coffee. I'm still working my way through this.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope, I definitely know our listeners will enjoy listening to this episode, and hopefully learn something from it, and maybe start getting into competing.
Yes.
or
That's the goal.
start their coffee journey. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Real quick, Morgan, where can people find you to like connect with you and engage with your content?
Yes. I am Morgan Drinks Coffee on most platforms, primarily Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I also have a coffee newsletter called Coffee for Here, so you can find me at Morgan Drinks Coffee on Substack too.
All right. Well, that was episode 25. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you again, Morgan. Hope you have a wonderful week.